Some days at Chiefs camp are worse than others when it comes to injuries, and this seemed to be one of those days as 5 different Chiefs players were carted off to the locker room for further evaluation. Thankfully though, one of the most potentially concerning players seemed to be a minor scare, so I've got to talk about that. The Chiefs reportedly aiming to sign a couple players to some long-term deals very soon, camp highlights, and more. But first, how about those? All right, first up, before we get into today's practice, there's a lot to talk about here. Trust me, injuries, some highlight plays, and more. I did first want to mention that yesterday, the infamous burner account, Pretty Rickey, dropped a bomb of a tweet with some Chiefs news. And before you say, Cole, why are you reporting on something from an account like this? This is not a verified report. I just want to mention that this account has verified connections, most likely on the agent side of negotiations, that's been proven accurate over a dozen or so times this offseason, from the Calvin Ridley signing where he signed with a division rival to quarterback contracts and more. He's been right way more than wrong. So when Pretty Rickey drops news about the Chiefs, you can take it as pretty likely to happen. With that being said, Rickey said that the Chiefs will be making Creed Humphrey the highest paid center in the coming weeks, and kicker Harrison Butker will be getting a new deal too. Both of these moves, great news, no-brainer moves in my opinion. And now that Jason Kelce retired, Creed Humphrey is at the top of this list, the best center in the NFL. And in order to become the highest paid center, Creed has to top Frank Ragnow's $13.5 million average per year deal. So I would imagine Creed signs a 3 or 4 year deal averaging around 14 or so million per year. And that potentially means right now, Trey Smith might sign elsewhere next year in free agency because the guard market is pretty insane at the moment. Smith is going to get somewhere around 20 million per year in free agency, which is honestly well-deserved. I mean, if the Chiefs can find a way to keep him around for years to come as well, I would love it, but they cannot pay everyone. That is the sad business of the NFL. However, the other player it looks like they will be paying is kicker Harrison Butker. Last year's season-long MVP, in my opinion, bailing them out of multiple games, and they would not have won a Super Bowl without him. So while Rickey didn't say Butker will become the highest paid kicker, I still imagine he's up there alongside Justin Tucker and Jake Elliott, who are currently tied for the highest paid kicker, earning $6 million per year. Butker is just as good as Tucker, in my opinion, and he's 5 years younger. Also has a 3% higher career field goal percentage than Elliott. So it's safe to assume Butker is probably going to get a new deal at least around that $6 million per year mark or very close to it. But with that being said, what do you guys think about this news? Out of the 4 perceived to be most important players on contract years to consider, Nick Bolton, Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, and Harrison Butker, do you agree with the 2 so far that are reportedly getting new deals? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Next up, today's practice is the first of 3 in a row this week that have the players back in full pads. And we have some good news along with some bad news when it comes to today. The good news is several players were seen back out there returning from injury or sickness. The bad news is several more players left practice due to injuries of some sort. Before I get to that, though, the players who did not practice today were cornerback Nazeeh Johnson. He's dealing with a minor hamstring issue on the same knee he had repaired, his ACL. Then safety Justin Reid is dealing with a quad issue. And wide receiver Justin Watson, foot, were the 3 that didn't practice. Nazeeh should be back sooner than later. Meanwhile, Justin Reid's quad could have him out the rest of camp and preseason per some reports. Then as far as Justin Watson's foot is concerned, there's no real update there. Andy Reid didn't make it seem too serious when he spoke about Watson's foot a few days ago. But he also said Justin Watson is currently day-to-day with that foot issue, which really could mean just about anything. Then, as far as the players who did return to practice today, cornerback Jaylen Watson was seen out there with his helmet on, with Matt Derrick mentioning that means Watson appeared to clear his physical and is off the PUP list. To be clear, though, while Watson's helmet was on, he wasn't yet in full pads, but it's still a step in the right direction nonetheless. He had off-season shoulder surgery on his labrum after playing through the injury nearly all season long, so he appears to be doing well in his recovery, which is great news because the cornerback 2 spot is still a position very much up for grabs with Joshua Williams, Nazeeh Johnson, Kelvin Joseph, and now, hopefully very soon, Jaylen Watson all in the mix for that spot. Spags made it clear earlier this week the battle is still wide open, but Kelvin Joseph has been making enough plays to get some work in with the first team defense, and I talked about him earlier on in this video here. Then Ron Kopp Jr., the lead analyst of Arrowhead Pride, has him as a dark horse to make the roster. The next player on defense to return was defensive tackle Chris Jones. He was held out a couple of days with a groin strain, but was back in pads today. Matt Derrick did mention, though, that he was spotted going over to the conditioning team at some point during practice, which is nothing unusual for a guy nursing an injury. Then, running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire was back practicing after missing some practices for mental health reasons. I shared about this in more detail during Monday's video, but he's been having flare-ups of PTSD that I believe is from an incident that happened back in 2018 during his sophomore year at LSU. He was with a teammate of his, Jared Small, attempting to sell some electronics when a guy jumped in the back of their truck with a gun in an attempted robbery. CEH and his teammate Small were in the front seat of the car, and Jared Small actually pulled a gun out of his own and fired at the guy in the back seat, striking him multiple times. So I would think that event, combined with the more recent Super Bowl rally shooting that Clyde and obviously every other Chiefs player was at, that might have been contributing to the PTSD flare-ups he's been having. But either way, I'm very glad to see Clyde back out there working. And finally, wide receiver Hollywood Brown was back out there practicing after missing a couple days due to an illness. So Hollywood Brown, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Chris Jones, and Jaylen Watson all returned. But, big but here, a total of 5 players ended up getting banged up and leaving today's practice. First up was wide receiver Kadarius Toney. He appeared to sustain a lower body injury after a 1v1 rep. He made a leaping attempt at a downfield pass from Chris Oladokun and was hit hard by cornerback DJ Miller while trying to catch the ball. After that, he took a knee and was walking around gingerly before heading over to the medical tent where trainers looked at his lower leg and eventually got carted off, riding in the front of the cart. Andy Reid later said it was Toney's ankle, and while I'm not sure which ankle it is, he did have one of them wrapped up during practice for several days now. We shall see the extent of Toney's injury here soon, but that was my main concern about Toney from the jump. Can this man stay healthy enough to survive Andy Reid's training camp and really earn that roster spot? The next 2 players with injuries were offensive tackle Jason Chu-Godric and tight end Isaiah Gathings. They were both seen in the medical tent, and both of them actually rode off in the cart together. Gathings in the front and Godric in the back. Andy Reid later mentioned that it was Godric's ankle and Isaiah's hamstring. The extent of the injuries obviously not known just yet. Next was another offensive lineman in McCade Matire, who also was dealing with an ankle injury. So that's 3 ankle injuries in one practice. Charles Goldman reported that McCade could be seen in the tent with his cleat off, getting his right foot looked at. And if all that wasn't enough, the most concerning, potentially concerning player of the day dealing with an injury was linebacker Nick Bolton. The reason why is trainers could be seen looking at his left arm after he got his elbow caught between 2 guys while making a tackle on Mecole Hardman during 11-on-11. Pete Sweeney said that Bolton looked extremely shaken up after this. He then got his left arm looked at by trainers and rode off in the cart. All Andy Reid said after practice about Bolton was he got his elbow banged up. And the reason I'm a bit concerned here is that last year, Nick Bolton had surgery on his left wrist, which had him out for a couple of months. So you hate to see the same arm affected, and you really hate to see a guy like Nick Bolton, who struggled with unfortunate injuries last year, and a guy that is on a contract year this year, dealing with something this early on at camp. All we can hope for is that the injury is minor, because this is a big year for Bolton, and he is a very important aspect of the defense. Thankfully, the Chiefs do have Drew Tranquill back, and he can effectively fill in for Bolton at the Mike linebacker spot as needed. And before I hit export on today's video, I did want to give an update via Matt Verderam of Sports Illustrated, who shared that Nick Bolton left practice earlier today with an elbow injury, but Matt was told he is expected to be fine. Avoiding any serious injury is both pivotal to Casey's defense and for Bolton, who, on a personal level, is entering a contract year. So, from the looks of it, it was a scare, and this shouldn't be anything major from Nick Bolton injury-wise, and I am glad to hear it. Now, believe it or not, practice was not all doom and gloom. There were definitely some highlights and notes worth talking about. For starters, Hollywood Brown looks just fine after returning due to sickness, being seen tracking down this nicely lofted ball from Mahomes early on during practice. You just love to see a receiver this year being able to track a ball down and catch it. No complaints there. Isaiah Pacheco then had this nice rep during 9-on-7s, finding the hole on the right side, sprinting down the field. Charles Goldman of A to Z Sports echoed similar reports about Pacheco today when he said Pacheco definitely looks quicker this year. I agree, and I think this full offseason that he spent healthy and training has been nothing but great for him. Now, nobody's perfect, and Pop also got the ball stripped from him on this pass here, but honestly, I also have to give some props to Chamari Connor as he flew in quickly to force the fumble. A receiver who has certainly had his struggles at camp so far did have a few positive reps today, with Kadarius Toney and Justin Watson out due to injuries. Skyy Moore has seen an increase in reps with the first-team offense. In fact, in my interview with Ron Kopp Jr. of Arrowhead Pride yesterday, he said that Skyy Moore was actually the next man up on the pecking order to get reps in after Justin Watson's injury. But with Toney out too, he's getting even more reps in. Mahomes found him here on this scramble right for a nice connect as Brian Cook brought Skyy down. Then Skyy had a nice rep 1v1 against McDuffie right here, cutting inside and hauling the pass in. There wasn't a ton of separation, but there was enough to come down with the catch. Then another rep against McDuffie. Skyy almost hauled in this deep catch down the right side, but he did bobble the pass and was unable to get both feet in bounds. Next up, defensive back Kelvin Joseph is a guy who's benefiting from the injuries in the cornerback room, with Andy Reid saying he's not concerned about the majority of the injuries piling up at the moment, but it has indeed been good for the young guys in the room to get some extra reps. And speaking of the secondary, it's worth noting that the first-team corners included both Joshua Williams and Kelvin Joseph, with Trent McDuffie today. Second-team corners were Echo Boydo, Keith Taylor, and Nick Jones. Now, back to Kelvin Joseph for a second because he made another great play today after reportedly making several pass breakups all throughout camp, especially recently, but he perfectly timed this interception on Mahomes, who attempted a back shoulder throw to Xavier Worthy. Wasn't the best throw here. Also, maybe could have been a bit on Worthy. Maybe he expected Worthy to turn a bit earlier and even make a play on the ball. I'm just guessing there. But either way, it was a great play by Kelvin and shows why he is getting more reps in with the first-team defense. And while that pass in particular was picked off, Mahomes did try to connect with Worthy a few more times today, but wasn't really able to get in sync with him, throwing multiple incompletions for one reason or another. But hey, you got to keep firing. It's the deep ball, and we're bringing it back. One way, though, they were able to get Worthy the ball was on this end-around pitch from Mahomes as Worthy went behind the line of scrimmage to take the ball down the left sideline. There's a couple of awesome things to talk about here. Worthy looks like he's going to be dangerous on these with his vision and speed, but also take a look at left tackle Kingsley Suamataia leading the charge. This man is 324 pounds and is flying down the field. Brian Cook had to be like, hell nah, when he saw Kingsley coming at him like a freight train. And speaking of Kingsley, he was once again working with the first-team offense as the left tackle, making that 4 out of 4 padded practices for him with the projected starters. Andy Reid spoke on the left tackle battle today, saying he loves the competition. He feels comfortable with the progress of both Kingsley and Wanya Morris so far. They've just got to keep working and plugging away. Another receiver who's aiming to keep stacking good days and plugging away is wideout Nico Remigio. He spoke with the media today saying it's been a blessing to be able to learn with somebody as great as Patrick Mahomes. It's helped evolve his game, and he's added what he's learned to become a better version of himself. His time with KC hasn't been the easiest, especially spending last year on IR and having to watch the team win the big game from the sidelines. He's a competitor and wants to do whatever it takes to be out there on the field. However, he's used to being the underdog and he doesn't mind it as he fights for a spot on the roster. One reason he said he signed with the team in the first place last year was because of what he felt he could contribute as a returner. And so far, he's been taking the first duo kick return reps next to Louis Rees-Zammit. And LRZ could be seen attempting a return here and had trouble finding the hole. It's going to take some time, man, for LRZ to adjust from rugby to football. But hey, one rep after another keeps stacking them. Nico said that so far, at least, kickoffs have been fun. You have to make decisions quick as there's a lot going on with a little amount of space. And speaking of LRZ, he was seen getting reps with the third-team offense alongside Amani Bailey during the run period. Then for the second team, it was Carson Steele, CEH, and Keontae Ingram. And then, once again, Deneric Prince was getting first-team reps immediately following Isaiah Pacheco. I still don't know if Prince legitimately will be RB2 if he makes the roster, but he's continuing to make the case to at least be fighting for a roster spot, whether it's RB2 or RB3. The Chiefs are certainly giving him plenty of looks at the very least. Anyway, before I'm done talking about Remigio today, he did catch this beauty of a pass from Carson Wentz on a deep crosser for the near score. And Wentz so far has proven himself to be a fantastic addition to the QB room as the backup for Mahomes. He's been showing himself the high IQ starting level QB we've known him to be, making great pass after great pass. That's great for the second team offense, those who are catching the passes from him, but also challenges the second team defense to rise to the occasion. Justin Ross has been a bit quieter this camp compared to last, but he had a great catch on an out route here, fighting through a jersey tug to extend for the completion and bounce. Then, look at this ball placement from Wentz to Mecole Hardman here, fitting the ball perfectly over the head of Keith Taylor for the first down. Exactly what I'm talking about with Wentz. Another guy who's been out there really standing out is wide receiver Montrell Washington. He's made play after play almost every single day at camp, catching multiple deep balls from Wentz, including this awesome diving catch. Then he had this insane 1v1 rep here, leaping up to catch the ball with one hand, securing it on his way down. I mean, what a freaking grab. Sadly, he wasn't able to get a knee or both feet down in time, so it wouldn't have been ruled a completed catch, but it still shows off just how good Montrell's hands are. He has an uphill battle, I would say, to make the roster, but he's certainly making the case for a depth piece guy, wide receiver 6, that could primarily be used in the return game, while also being able to contribute on offense if needed due to injuries. And to further build on his good days, Washington could be seen fighting through contact and hauling in a deep ball from Wentz while falling to the ground near the left sideline here. Kamal Hadden was all over the guy, and he was able to reel it in. You love to see it. Then, of course, Patrick Mahomes continued to thread the needle himself on multiple plays, QB1 for a reason, and he completed several passes, like this one here down the left sideline to the yak merchant, Rashee Rice, who's looking nice and peppy in his step. He also found Kelce in stride while double covered on this play, a perfectly executed connect per usual. When regarding the best QB and the best tight end in the game, Kelce found himself open again deeper down the right sideline shortly after, and Mahomes threw it right over the top of Drew Tranquill for the completion. Kelce looks as if he's in midseason form already. Just hope he stays healthy this year like he normally does. And he's going for 1,000 yards plus. Book it. Mahomes also beautifully threaded this pass to rookie tight end Jared Wiley, who had a couple defenders in his vicinity while running a shallow crosser. You love to see that. I can't wait to see more from the rookie. And with that, you guys got to let me know your thoughts on today's practice. You think Skyy was stacking up a better day? What do you think about the injuries from today's practice? All 5 players, who gives you the most concern? Let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?